did kind of save your life.
You're right, Stiles. Thank you. Thanks for invading my home, for putting me on the run, for turning me back to human so that I could look at my father every day and try to figure out how to explain to him that the reason my sister and mother are dead is because I almost ate them on a full moon. Thank you so very much.
Today, you are joining us as we initiate a strict biological and sociological case study into the metamorphic evolution of Malia Tate.
Right.
We are focusing right away on a central, highly debated thesis proposed by Paul from Teen Wolf News.
And Paul argues something very specific.
He does. He argues that Malia Tate's ability to voluntarily and completely shapeshift is definitively not the result of raw supernatural energy acquisition. It's actually a profound manifestation of studied, knowledge-based somatic control, cognitive acquisition.
How did she finally learn to control the beast inside?
Right. And to understand her eventual mastery over her physical form. I mean, we really have to go back and understand the initial failure.
We do. We have to look at the biology of an involuntary shift.
So let's take you back to Malia's very first transformation. She's 9 years old.
Right, just 9.
And this is exactly 8 years prior to the events of season 3. The inciting incident is this horrific car crash where her mother and sister are killed. And the research compiled by Paul makes it incredibly clear this first morphological change into a coyote was in absolutely no way a conscious choice.
Not at all. I mean, if we look at this through a purely physiological lens, it's just a textbook autonomic trauma response. We were talking about the human fight-or-flight mechanism, right? Your body perceives a fatal threat, and it just takes over. But here, we're looking at a radical genetic variation. It's a bite-or-flight response. During that car crash, the extreme stress and the immediate threat to her life triggered her body's ultimate alarm system. Her adrenal and pituitary glands basically went into massive overdrive.
Which makes sense biologically.
Yeah. And in a baseline human, that just means an insane adrenaline spike.
Think of it like those wild stories you hear on the news, where a parent's body floods with adrenaline and they suddenly have the sheer muscular force to lift a 2-ton car off a trapped child.
Yes, exactly like that.
The body completely bypasses your conscious limits to ensure your survival. You don't think about lifting the car, your biology just does it.
Right. The conscious mind is totally shut out of the process.
But the devastating difference in Malia's case is that this reflex permanently altered her physical structure without her conscious consent. And then she was trapped in that state.
And the psychological fallout of that is just staggering to consider.
Yeah.
Because the shift was a blind, automatic survival reaction, Malia lived as a full coyote for 8 years with absolutely zero cognitive understanding of her state.
I mean, she was a 9-year-old girl trapped in the woods.
Exactly. For nearly a decade, her entire cognitive reality was restricted to the sensory input and the instinctual drives of a wild animal.
Yeah.
She didn't know how the transformation occurred in the first place, which logically means she possessed absolutely none of the neurological pathways required to reverse it.
Right, there was no conscious mapping of the cellular changes happening in her body.
None. She didn't view herself as a human who had somehow magically changed. Her perceived reality was simply that she was a coyote. Well, that physiological reset is exactly what necessitates our next phase of study. We have to look at the somatic re-education, and it really starts with Scott McCall's intervention in season 3.
Let's talk about that, because Scott uses his alpha roar to force Malia back into her human form.
The key word there is force.
Right.
When Scott utilized his alpha abilities, he triggered an external override. It was not an internal revelation for Malia. She didn't suddenly remember how to be human. Her biology was physically compelled to revert.
Yeah, so while she was physically returned to her adoptive father as a human teenager, her baseline cognitive understanding of her own supernatural anatomy remained completely blank.
It was a total void. And the proof of this absolute lack of control is sitting right there in the dialogue during her subsequent commitment to Eichenhaus.
Oh, absolutely.
We were just trying to help.
You want to help me? Find a way to change me back.
You want to go back to being a coyote?
What do you know?
That linguistic choice is so telling from a behavioral standpoint. I mean, look at what she's actually saying.
Yeah.
She doesn't ask Stiles to teach her how to change. She asks him to find a way to change her. She still views the transformation as something that happens to her. It's an external force, not an internal process she can enact herself. She has zero physical agency.
Right.
Consequently, the pedagogy of her shifting, the actual teaching process, had to begin from absolute scratch.
Stiles and Scott were basically running the weirdest, most dangerous driver's ed class in history.
You really were.
It was a grueling, methodical process. They couldn't just say, okay, Malia, focus really hard and turn into a coyote. They had to start by rebuilding her neural pathways with the tiniest involuntary mechanics.
Right, the absolute basics.
She slowly graduated to deliberately flicking out her claws.
Don't think about it too much. Just try to let it happen.
Oh, wow.
I'm so sorry.
You see this progression heavily documented through seasons 4 and 5.
It's a very slow build.
It is. And even then, she required incredibly strict external physical parameters to manage the full moons.
Yeah, they had to take her down to Lydia Martin's lake house.
Right, and literally use heavy chains for restraint.
I'm not gonna run, because I don't think you're gonna hurt me.
It's an intensive, exhausting process of somatic re-education.
Let me push back a little.
Sure, go ahead.
If she could successfully sustain a full coyote form for 8 uninterrupted years, her biology is obviously more than capable of it. The hardware clearly works.
It does.
So why couldn't her body just tap into the exact same state again upon command? Isn't it just a matter of the biology being temporarily blocked?
Yeah.
Like, why the slow progression?
That is the core question, but we really have to separate the hardware from the software here. You're right. The fact that she maintained the form for 8 years proves the biological hardware was fully functional. The physical capacity was there.
Okay.
But the software, meaning the cognitive mapping, required to deliberately tell her brain to fire the precise sequence of neurons to initiate a morphological change that was entirely missing.
Oh, I see.
She only achieved the first shift because of acute, life-threatening trauma. Without a literal car crash triggering her biology for her, she had absolutely no idea how to turn the system on. The slow progression with Scott and Stiles was necessary to build that software from the ground up, literally writing the code line by line.
Okay. But that established timeline of slow, deliberate practice is exactly what ends up conflicting with the sudden, massive physical leap she exhibits later on in the series.
It does.
And that brings us to the primary sociological misconception among viewers. It's the exact fallacy that Paul is seeking to dismantle. Let's dig into the supernatural endowment fallacy.
To really deconstruct this, we have to look at the inciting incident at the McCall house during the season 5 finale. The episode Apotheosis.
Right. Malia is cornered and violently attacked by her biological mother, the desert wolf, Corinne.
Right.
I want my power back. I want my family back.
Malia utilizes Belasco's Garuda talent. She stabs Corinne, and she successfully absorbs her mother's remaining supernatural power. She essentially takes the spark.
And this is exactly where the timeline illusion heavily skews audience perception. Because the very next time Malia makes a canonical appearance is in the season 6 debut. Now, in the timeline of the show, this is 3 months later. But for the audience watching at home, in broadcast time, it was an agonizing 4-month hiatus.
Right, so a lot of time passed for the viewers.
Yeah, and in that season 6 debut, Malia is suddenly seen effortlessly, seamlessly shifting out of a full coyote form.
And the visual juxtaposition there is incredibly persuasive. Viewers witness the violent power absorption in the finale, and then the very next episode, they see complete physical mastery.
Yeah.
The human brain naturally assumes direct causation. So the prevailing theory became very simple. Stolen power equals shifting ability.
But when we actually apply the rigorous canonical data that Paul dictates, that entire theory just falls apart.
It absolutely crumbles. As we just established, Malia never once suffered from a deficit of power. The energy required to sustain a continuous, uninterrupted transformation for 8 years is mathematically staggering.
Yeah, the battery was already fully charged.
Exactly. She already possessed vast reserves of raw supernatural energy. And if we need further proof that her raw power was never the issue, we just have to look at the lake house incident from season 4.
Oh, right.
Recall the moment she temporarily lost emotional control during a full moon.
Oh, look at your face. I want to smash it. I want to tear it. I want to feel your bones crack between my hands.
God, it's such a terrifying moment in the show.
It is, because at that specific moment, her baseline transformation was incredibly strong, violent, and highly potent. And she achieved that terrifying state entirely without any extra absorbed power from Kareen.
Right.
Her issue was never a deficit of energy. What she suffered from was a deficit of execution. Attributing her eventual mastery solely to the fact that she, quote-unquote, stole power is a severe miscalculation.
Yeah.
It fundamentally ignores the intense, sustained psychological and physical discipline that she, Scott, and Stiles engaged in for over a year and a half.
Right. It basically says all her hard work didn't matter. Only the magic shortcut mattered, which is just wrong.
Precisely. So, having definitively proven that the power absorption was not the catalyst for her shifting ability, the narrative is obligated to provide empirical proof that cognition, the software, was the true mechanism.
And the canon absolutely delivers this proof unequivocally.
It does.
We see this play out tragically during what we'll call the anchor regression.
Yes. The Ghostwriter's arc in Season 6 serves as a perfect, albeit devastating, controlled experiment for our analysis.
For those who need a quick refresher, the Ghostwriters are a supernatural force that possess the terrifying ability to erase an individual entirely from existence, wiping them completely from the collective memory of everyone they know.
And when the Ghostwriters erase Stiles Skalinski, they inadvertently alter Malia's entire cognitive architecture.
Maybe try some positive self-talk. I'm positive I don't want to be here.
And without the cognitive scaffolding that Stiles helped construct over the last year and a half, simple, mundane academic frustration causes her somatic control to collapse entirely.
Let's breathe together, just a little deeper.
We witness a complete systemic biological failure.
It's a profound regression. I mean, as her frustration mounts, her claws involuntarily deploy. She undergoes a traumatic involuntary shift and flees in an absolute panic down to the school basement.
It's okay. You're safe.
Malia fully retains the physical power boost she took from the Desert Wolf. Her biology remains enhanced, but socially and psychologically, she loses her primary anchor.
Yeah.
More importantly, she loses the structural memories of the learned mental framework that Stiles explicitly helped her build to regulate her own nervous system. The software gets deleted.
Oh man, that is so tragic. And I really want to emphatically point out the scientific finality of this exact moment for you. Look, if the ability to successfully govern her intricate morphological shifts was strictly tied to the physical power she drained from Kareen, then erasing a human teenage boy from her memory would have absolutely zero physiological impact on her control.
None whatsoever.
The fact that a cognitive erasure losing a memory triggered a complete physiological collapse proves undeniably that her control was entirely rooted in her mind, not her muscles.
The data absolutely speaks for itself. This regression unequivocally proves the thesis presented by Teen Wolf News. It was the accumulation of time, the processing of traumatic experience, and highly learned cognitive focus that served as the true catalyst.
Yeah.
That is what bridged the gap between raw potential and physical mastery. The carefully learned neural pathways were the literal mechanism of control, allowing us to finalize our case study with a definitive conclusion.
To maintain that supernatural endowment fallacy unfairly negates a year and a half of intense physical and psychological discipline.
It really does. It proves that knowledge, memory, and cognitive discipline, not raw power, are the true architects of her physical form.